Good morning. I think that is
Yes, we are all happy.
that is the legal way, Dr. Suresh. Yeah.
We are happy
Thank
to have Professor Dr. N. Raju, our President-elect of IPS. He is from Visakhapatnam. And
Thank you, Dr. Suresh. I think sometimes uh, the I never thought that I would be chairing today, thanks to Dr. Jagadish not coming. Basically, as I was the accidental president, I have become an accidental chairperson today too. Uh, I thank the organizers for giving this opportunity, and I think no better way of starting the session on a very cautious and a legal note. I think this is something which we all need to learn, and I think no better person in the country to speak on those aspects. And we are fortunate that we have him in South Zone, and we have him on the dais today. Welcome, Dr. Suresh. I think who doesn't require any introduction to the audience. We all know that he is a professor of psychiatry at NIMANS and also I think uncrowned king of legal psychiatry and also the telemedicine. So I think they're giving me a CV which I really doubt I require this. But anyway, so we all know that he has a qualified psychiatrist and also a PhD in law. And he has more than 350 publications, and he has a Dr. Program's Distinguished Young Teachers Award. And also he is more famous as a YouTuber. I think his presentations, not only on legal aspects, but also on many, many aspects of psychiatry, especially for the postgraduates. He speaks on many aspects of, I think that is the best way of learning for the young psychiatrists on YouTube. So for those who are online, who visit today's his lecture today perhaps still they can go back to his YouTube and may learn the same things. Again, we are having you here, pleasure, Dr. Suresh, and I request my co-chair to introduce the topic.
Very good morning. I think our president-elect of IPS, Dr. Raju, has already briefed about the overall problem that we are facing today in the legal issues of telepsychiatry, which is a very new branch to our psychiatric medication. It's not only to the psychiatric medication, in general to all part of medicine. So the concerns over the prescription and the follow-up, the routine rules of monthly long-acting antipsychotics, the modified ECTs, and all these things are problematic when the telepsychiatric consultation comes into the limelight. So in a busy clinical practice, it is a very difficult task to maintain all these things, and moreover, record maintenance is one of the most complicated area in that. So I think Professor Suresh will enlighten with all these loopholes of today's drawbacks of this telemedicine in psychiatry, and I'll just hand over the mic to him.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, everyone. On this auspicious day from Madurai, which is one of the oldest city, and Tamil language originated here, and every road leads to temple, Amma temple actually. So with my teachers in front of me, Dr. Pannirselvam, Savitra Malhotra ma'am, and it's honor to be here. And Ramkrishna sir, when I came to the hall at 8:40, I thought it will take 10:30, 11 to start. But you made sure it started at right time, 9:30. That is the beauty of IPS South Zone. Thank you very much, sir, starting at the right time. So I'll be discussing about the telepsychiatry legal aspects. I'll be rushing through, and we will spend more time in discussion rather than presentation. So the commonest question what I hear most of the time, will telemedicine replace in-person consultation? This is the commonest question across wherever I have been presentation. This is the common question they ask. Let me be very clear, technology will not solve human problems. So it's not going to replace in-person consultation, but it augments. What does it mean? Don't separate telemedicine and in-person consultation. Both are actually, for a single person, if you ask me if I am a patient, if I have to go and meet Dr. Reddy sir, or Vishal Reddy, if I have to go 10 times in a year, 5 will be telemedicine, 5 will be in-person consultation. It should be augmenting both. Don't separate both. What will happen if you separate both? No, I will give only telemedicine or telepsychiatry and I will do only in-person. If that is the case, you will lose patients. Because as the day passes, the patient would like to see who is the best psychiatrist available, talk to them, then they will do in-person consultation. So neither will replace each other. Both are required now. It is not that telepsychiatry will replace completely. No, it's not possible. But every psychiatrist has to take up medicine because each patient requires both. A patient who is coming from long distance, your own old patients, and they would like to see you online for just 5 minutes. For that, I think it's fine. So for that reason, you have to use telemedicine or telepsychiatry. So that's where the issue comes. Now, question is, the second commonest question what I get from various audience are, can a psychiatrist issue a medical certificate after seeing the patient on telemedicine? This is the commonest question. All laws that are applicable in person also applicable on telemedicine. That means if you have seen patient on telemedicine or through telepsychiatry, you are bound to give a certificate. You cannot say I will not give, but however you can say I would like to do a thorough evaluation, please come for in-person consultation, then I will give. Or else you make a provisional diagnosis and you can say this is my provisional diagnosis, because this is the commonest issue which occurred during COVID. Patients are seen and there was issues in the workplace and they did not attend because of COVID various reasons. They are asking now for a certificate and you can say provisional diagnosis of depression or adjustment disorder. That's the way it has been considered. So now the next question is, what are the legal framework? So one is telemedicine guideline, which was released on 25th March 2020. And this is Appendix 5 actually of the IMC regulation ethics. So this ethics regulation is getting redrafted, or what we call it as amended. This Tuesday is the meeting is there in Delhi. So again, because under the new legislation, National Medical Commission, the ethics is going to be revamped completely, including digital space. Because ethics, what we have now is only for the in-person consultation. So social media, how to behave in social media, the doctors in WhatsApp group, how we are dealing, posting patients' photographs, or maybe the case vignettes. So those are the things will be dealt through. Now we have come up with the telepsychiatry operational guidelines. Now the question comes is, should I follow telemedicine guideline or telepsychiatry operational guideline? Which one is the right one? So however, this telepsychiatry operational guidelines, IPS, Telemedicine Society of India and Demands came together and we drafted this operational guideline. And which one to follow? If you ask me, it is the telemedicine guideline is the baseline. Along with that, you have to follow Mental Health Care Act. So Mental Health Care Act is a legislation. Telemedicine guideline is a regulation. Under that, in the Appendix 5, it comes in. So you have to follow Mental Health Care Act first. Then you will follow the telemedicine guidelines. Telepsychiatry operational guideline is basically wherever there is a gray area, you will be using it. So don't think that telepsychiatry operational guidelines is going to be the law. No, it is a guideline. Just like clinical practice guideline, this is a guideline. Wherever there is a gray area, those gray areas, I am going to discuss that. So telepsychiatry operational guidelines or even telemedicine guideline is not a standalone. It has to be used with other clinical guidelines, law, regulations, whichever is there, you have to follow those. You cannot say that I'm just doing telemedicine. No, you have to follow Mental Health Care Act. You have to follow the various other rules and regulations like Drugs and Cosmetic Acts, and also the Mental Health Care Act, NDPS Act, RPWD Act. That means you will not contravene any law just because you are on telemedicine or telepsychiatry platform. So these are the various, even you can't say that the Consumer Protection Act is another one which has come. E-commerce, again, telemedicine comes under that ambit. Patient can sit somewhere and also can lodge the complaint. But however, there is a discussion going on. Doctors do not come under the Consumer Protection Act, but let me be very clear. The interpretation of law, we all come under that. But however, there is some rumors. Somebody wants to challenge already in Bombay High Court. I think they have started telling that they are challenging the doctors being under the Consumer Protection Act. But let me be very clear. the legal fraternity wants us to be regulated, whether we like it or not. So it will come under Consumer Protection Act. Already in IMA versus VP Shanta, Supreme Court discussion or judgment is there. Under that, we are already there. So considering that, we will come under that. Along with that Clinical Establishment Act, this is again, there is a gray area. For example, in Karnataka, Private Clinical Establishment Act is there. To practice in Karnataka, you have to register there and you have to follow those rules telling that this is the amount you will pay fees and you have to register there. But now the telemedicine comes as a disruption, or telepsychiatry comes as a disruption, because a doctor sitting in Tamil Nadu can practice and offer care for Bangalore patients. So that is a disruption. We don't know, there is a gray area, whether these clinical establishments act will say telemedicine, telepsychiatry will be kept outside the ambit of Clinical Establishment Act. Will it come? I don't know. That will be a discussion. But at this point of time, I don't have answers. So in summarizing, all laws which are applicable in person is applicable even in telepsychiatry. So you cannot say that it is not applicable. So the next question commonest people ask is how to inform my patient that I am providing telepsychiatry services. This is the another commonest question. So some of my youngsters, friends, they go on social media telling that on Facebook I am providing these services, I am giving this. Don't do that, because even in the previous meeting with NMC, National Medical Commission, they are crystal clear not to go for advertisement. If you do advertisement, it will be ethical violation, you may lose license. So no profession is allowed for advertisement. You take even the lawyers, they don't do advertisement. So none of the professionals are supposed to do advertisement. Even doctors cannot do advertisement. But however, there is an unequal platform has been placed. Suppose if I am in charge of one group of hospitals, like I am the chairman of a big corporate chain of hospitals. The chain of hospitals can do advertisement, but the doctor cannot do. So that is an unequal platform. This has been flagged to the NMC, telling that a corporate hospitals can do advertisement of their doctors with their photograph, but the individual doctor cannot do. That means a person, a single psychiatrist cannot do advertisement and give telepsychiatry, but a corporate hospital can do advertisement and give. So that's one of the biggest contention is there, but however, that will be solved fully in the upcoming meeting. So next, moving to the advertisement and informing. So there is a very thin line. Advertisement is doing repeatedly, giving the same information, that is advertisement. Inform is giving information. I'm available on telepsychiatry. That is by word of mouth or by giving the visiting card or on your prescription, you can put it that. So don't go for advertisement, don't put it on Facebook or on WhatsApp, don't do that. Invariably, it will call for ethical violation. So you have to be very clear about this. And again, being on social media, it's good to be on social media. Try to keep two separate accounts. One is professional account, another one is personal account. So don't mix both. If you mix both, invariably there will be, I may be discussing something and I may not agree with some of the doctors, and that fellow may say something, patient will be looking all this. That should not be a good taste, like in WhatsApp discussion or in Facebook. So keep two separate accounts. Maybe even the phone numbers, landline, mobile number, have a separate, completely dedicated. So that phone number can switch off after 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, depending upon that. Don't mix both. If you mix both, invariably you will get into trouble. So at the same time, be courteous to your colleagues on social media. Do not criticize your colleagues. That's where the problem starts. And political affiliation, showing it on social media. Again, patients, in front of patients, in front of the whole world, it doesn't look good. As a professional, we have our own affiliations, but that should not be shown in public. So that's another biggest ethical barrier or a issue which will be cropping up. So you have to be very clear about that. And by chance, if you are going to be on social media for educational purpose, identify yourself. Don't go in a ghost social media account. Don't do that. It doesn't look good. If you are going on social media, if you want to be on Facebook or you want to be there, you mention, I am so and so, I am responsible for what I speak. And you'll be accountable what you do. Don't go as a ghost and say something. Don't do that. So online presence, so this is one again, in the recent ethics guidelines, we have discussed every doctor should be given 1 page space so that the NMC is taking it seriously. telling that a doctor will have one photograph, his credentials, around 50 or 100, 200 words what he has done, so that the patient can search and know the credential. Yes, I'm consulting Dr. Pavitra, so her credential is like this. Or else I would like to meet Dr. Panir Salvan, so his credential is like this. So because now online searching is there, so many youngsters would like, by another 10 years, they will be searching online and seeing the rating. That's again another issue which I will be discussing. But however, the NMC members of them, they are saying rating, all those things to be discarded, because this rating can be manipulated online. If you pay money, your rating goes up, and as soon as you type the best doctor in Madurai, the Dr. Arvind is the best doctor, but I have started new practice, I pay from some online people, they will manipulate the ratings by click. That is basically there is a logarithm to search the way it looks, or if I search best doctor in Kadapa district, so it will show who is the best, but it can be manipulated easily. 10 people can sit for one day and manipulate it. And you just go on clicking the link, and the more the number of views the page is seen, the Google will show it up first. So that can be done. So that is the way it has been done, so that they are saying we should remove that. What should I do if a patient calls in the middle of the night and says, I'm going to commit suicide? This is another biggest ethical or legal issue which is there. So even the suicide helpline, if you want to start, there are issues with regard to doctors, because you are on the other side of the phone. That means telemedicine guidelines will apply. If a psychologist is sitting, the telemedicine guidelines do not apply to them. So even the phone call, if you receive a phone call, it is a teleconsultation, it is chargeable. Why it is chargeable? Because we have taken the model from the Western country. A 5 minutes phone call in US, as per the insurance, it is reimbursable. 10 minutes video call, there is a charge. Even for a phone call, it is a charge. And a patient sends maybe around 30 pages of medical records. And if you're going through that medical records, again, there is a charge for it, because you are giving opinion and you are spending time on that. So all those electronic medias has been considered. And nowadays, even the insurance companies are saying, before you go, please consult with us. Our doctors are available. Like insurance companies, if you can see, we are available on telemedicine. Before you go to any emergency, talk to us. We will facilitate. So even telemedicine is been moving in that direction. So in emergency cases, it should be in-person consultation, and that should be facilitatory in nature. So if a patient says that if I am suicidal, please tell him that you have nearest registered medical practitioner. That is very essential. So you cannot engage him for longer duration, and you will document that I have told him to come online or in person and avoid online consultation for longer duration. And that is the rule of thumb, especially. But however, you have to give some first aid. You have to tell him about some counseling. Those are the suggestions you have to give, and see that if a family member is available, you can talk to them. Invariably, when they call, many a time the family member may not be there. So in such a scenario, but you document the log, document the phone number and what time it happened. So that's very essential. Do not insist only on telepsychiatry. That is, I will available only on telemedicine, otherwise I will not see you. That's again ethical violation. And before you prescribe, arrive at a diagnosis or at a provisional diagnosis you have to make. Without that, telepsychiatry is unethical at this point of time. That is as per the telemedicine. And if a patient is asking medical records, that is another one legal challenge that's coming. So where does it speak? Should I follow under MCI or NMC or Mental Health Care Act? Invariably, if he is a person with mental illness, it is the Mental Health Care Act will follow, and you will follow both Mental Health Care Act and also the telemedicine guidelines. You will be using this prescription. So don't have the prescription, which is very simple. This is the NMC guideline or MCI guideline, which tells that it has to be this kind of prescription, which has various, like chief complaints is there. Okay, so sorry, it's... Okay, this is the... and next question is, should I have a software EMR or EHR, that is electronic health record? At this point of time, there is no mandatory requirement as per the telemedicine guidelines, because this is again one more big industry, especially in US. They say that if you want to be online, you have to have HIPAA compliance, you have to have this kind of software, you have to have this kind of storage space. And again, it's one more person in between doctor and patient. But telemedicine guidelines, when the first guideline came in 2008 or 2009, they were talking about EHR, EMR very seriously. But now in the telemedicine guideline which has been come, they are not telling anything about software because they want to keep it out of this software. I want to use this WhatsApp video consultation. I want to write on pen and paper. So I want to keep a physical record. Go slow. So that is the best way. At this point of time, I insist having the physical record rather than keeping online, because at this juncture, our whatever security features is there is technology is not to that level. It cannot be broken. Security can be breached. But however, there are some counter support is there for the doctors if there is a confidentiality breach occurs. But however, there is a new technology is coming up like Bitcoins, where they are using a highly security feature, which is, I'll not enter into that, but that is one, if it comes, it's already there. But again, there will be no physical server, but you can be able to provide services using that. But however, the time will tell about this. So this is the basic medical record as per the Mental Health Care Act. You should have that. So you'll be following both the Mental Health Care Act and also the telemedicine guidelines. And you will be using, if the patient asks, you have to give this OP record, which is nothing but just a OP prescription with provisional diagnosis and some symptoms. So every patient under Section 25 of Mental Health Care Act has right to access for their basic medical records. So you cannot deny their rights. So another one of the biggest study which was done in US, what are the security flaws which is occurring? Maximum security issues are occurred whenever the doctor loses his computer. Like I have brought my laptop, I have kept it here, somebody steals it. And I'm seeing patients and I have downloaded PDF files of some patients and it is there on my mobile or maybe on my laptop. So that is the biggest problem what they have found. More than anybody hacking, the doctors losing their laptop, or else the doctor's laptop is used by somebody else, maybe his daughter or his son. They are uploading something. Oh, I have found my dad's patient's photograph. Look how easy. He's psychotic, crazy, something they will be writing. So these kinds of security breaches have occurred. So it is more of our own negligence rather than the hacking. Moving to the consent. Now the consent is audio video recording. Not only physical signature on the paper, video or audio considered, and even the patient sending an email also considered as a consent. So that is going to change the way we are going to practice. Invariably, by another 10 or 15 years down the line, we may have a single consent video, a video of how to give ECT. Or else, what is ECT? Like Dr. Panneerselvan or Dr. Reddy sir or Vishal Reddy will talk on ECT for 10 minutes. What are the positive and negative aspects and how the ECT is given. And that video will be circulated across India. It is the basic one consent. If you give it to the patient and patient sees that and he will ask certain questions, so a standard video format will be available with maybe even saying I have seen this video. If he takes it, that means consent taken. So there are already in US, the various organizations have come up. They are now making repositories for consent form, like maybe cesarean section, maybe for this, a standard information given to the patient. Because otherwise, if the patient comes for ECT to me and to Dr. Ramakrishna, he may give different information, he may give more information, I'll be giving very less information. Or else I don't have any time at all. So that is the reason they want to have a standard information given across the country for a same, so that the digital platform will help. So if there is a internet connectivity issues, stop the session. After once the connectivity on either side, it may be on the patient side or in the doctor side, stop the session and restart after some time once the connectivity is there. How to know the connectivity is good or not? This is again optional. At the end of every session, send this form, ask the patient to rate. And any problem is there, they will give you feedback. And by that feedback, you will come to know whether the consultation was good or not. And you can call back. Your maybe a phone operator or your assistant can call back and ask, did you miss anything? Or did you misinterpret? So we have sent the prescription. Did you understand the prescription? Please read this form and send. By chance, tomorrow if the patient says, I did not understand, but this form is there, you have said, you have ticked it, telling that you have understood. So that communication gap will be there, because I'm speaking from here, I don't know on the other side of the platform on Zoom or maybe on the webinar, how many of them are able to hear my audio, I don't know. So to know that feedback, you have to have this, again, a feedback form, because it will give you a constant improvement. So that improvement will be helpful for you. Now comes the real picture where telepsychiatry will play a game changer. Can I do proxy consultation or proxy prescription? This is a common, even in NIMANS, 30% of our patients do not come. Usually the family members will come for refilling medication, and it is there in almost all of our practices, 30 to 40%. So now the telepsychiatry, that also is possible. The patient is not there, sir, father is calling you. Should I give the consultation or not? Or the wife will call you and say, my husband is taking alcohol, why don't you give a prescription? I have just recently I've heard one of the doctor speaking, Dr. Arvind speaking on the television, telling that I will give a medicine and that medicine will stop alcohol. So please give that medicine. Should I do the consultation or not? So as per the telemedicine guidelines, any teleconsultation can be initiated by the family members. It can be done. Like a patient will walk into your clinic and say, my son has not come, but he's very violent. Please tell me what to do. So similarly, proxy consultation can be done. Write down there clearly telling that, yes, the patient was not there. The issue comes as prescription. Because the patient is not there, without examining, you will not be able to make a diagnosis either in person or else even on the online. So for that reason, you have to be very clear. But however, if you are doing a proxy consultation and proxy prescription you are giving, make sure you have got an authorized letter. The authorized letter is very clear, is like this. But however, telemedicine guidelines do not give an authorization letter how to be there. But we have formulated a simple one that I am so and so, I am authorizing my family member to do teleconsultation on behalf. This has been a very, boon to patients. Again, the Gujarat doctors are using it very, very aggressively here. There are many of their patients who are there in abroad, but the family members are in India. So what does the telemedicine guideline says? It should be geographical jurisdiction. That means the patient should be in India and the family member should be in India. But however, this consultation here, what does it say? The patient is not here, but however, the family member is here. And the family member is consulting with the authorization letter, and you can give prescription to the family member, but the patient is outside the country. So again, legally it stands valid actually, if you ask me. Though the patient may not connect to you, but it's only the family member. So proxy consultation with the authorization letter, and if you are able to identify the patient and the family member, you can go ahead with the consultation. So caregiver has been defined. It's not only the family member, the patient can, as per the telemedicine guideline, he can authorize anybody, even another caregiver. Maybe it may be a person who is providing care in the halfway home, or maybe relative, friend, anybody can be a caregiver. So those people can do teleconsultation on behalf of them, but you have to have a clear-cut authorization letter. Without authorization letter, please don't do the telemedicine or telepsychiatry. So the next is initiation of a telepsychiatry consultation by a family member with the patient. If the patient is there with him, invariably elderly dementia patient is there, he is unable to give consent, and his son is doing or his daughter is doing a consultation now. But you don't know, there is a doubt whether the daughter is will misuse your certificate. That is a possible, and tomorrow the court may ask on what legal framework you are providing services to your patient who is dementia and the daughter has started the consultation. In such a scenario, there has been a clear, this is where telepsychiatry operational guidelines comes into picture. If you look at here, yeah, its highlighter is not working. Okay, so here the initiation of telepsychiatry, the family member and patients are both there. And if the patient is an adult, and here it is a children. If the children is there less than 16 years, that's what the telemedicine guideline says. You can go ahead with the teleconsultation, just talking to the family member, that is the parents is more than enough. If it is for adult patients, do a capacity assessment, which will be, tomorrow we will be discussing along with Dr. Mahesh. So we'll be doing a workshop, please do join there. If the capacity is there, then you will talk to the patient. If the patient agrees, you will go ahead. If the capacity is absent, and if it is the first consultation, ask for in-person consultation. If it is a follow-up consult, and if there is advance directive, and if you feel that there is no issues, then go ahead with the teleconsultation or else for in-person consultation. So there is a flexibility being allowed, and you can use this telemedicine practice guideline or telepsychiatry guideline for the benefit of our patient, especially in pediatric patients. That's where it is very beneficial. And also now coming to a telepsychiatry consultation without a family member. That's again, which is the commonest modality which we are seeing, and our young psychiatrists are using this very aggressively, and it has been found to be very useful. Here again, if you look at the initiation of telepsychiatry consultation by a family member without a patient, if it is a first consult, talk to the family members, complete the consultation, don't give prescription and say we require family member, but the patient should be there, and you can say that please bring him for the in-person consultation. If it is a follow-up consult, check for the authorization letter, and you feel that there is no issues, you can go ahead with the consultation, or else if you feel that you are unable to identify the family member, you can stop the consultation. So moving towards, be very clear, proxy consultation and proxy prescription. For first consult, avoid both proxy prescription. Proxy consultation, you can go ahead, give information, what are the laws says, what are the problems they are going through. You can do the counseling, complete the consultation. But however, please do mention telling that patient was not available. So that is about the proxy consultation and prescription. The next question comes is, can I provide injectable through telepsychiatry? This is where there is an issue, because telemedicine guideline clearly says that do not give injections online. That is basically prescribing, because there should be another care provider on the other side. It may be a nurse, it may be a doctor on the other side. Then only you have to give prescription online. Otherwise, it should be avoided. And it has been discussed in length. However, many of the esteemed members from Telemedicine Society and many of them said no, there should be a healthcare provider. That is the reason it has been not been considered. So this is as per the, this has been again clarified under telemedicine guideline. Board of Governors have clearly said that the injectable, if you are giving, on the other side there should be a caregiver or a nurse, and anything goes wrong, you will be held responsible. That's what they have said. You want to give, you give, but if the patient goes somewhere else and he takes injection by himself, something goes wrong, it is a vicarious liability, because just giving prescription is not enough. It is injected or given in a right format, right dose, it is the responsibility of the doctor. So vicarious liability will be on the doctor. That is there very clear. Because of that, vicarious liability has been brought in. So if any questions are there regarding vicarious liability, I'll be able to take it. And the last one is the healthcare workers. If a patient is not coming out of the house and is creating trouble, like Dr. Mahesh from Spandana Nursing Home is running an ambulance services for his old patients. That means he knows the diagnosis, the file is there, and he has stopped medicine, he is becoming aggressive now. He sends his ambulance along with a healthcare worker. He goes to their house, and then when the patient, the healthcare worker sees him, he does all these important telemedicine guidelines they will follow. And even the healthcare worker has been trained in capacity assessment. And if required, injection is given, he will be shifted to the hospital. That is under Section 94 of Mental Health Care Act. Emergency treatment is given, is brought to the hospital. The families are very helpful, and they are feeling that this is a boon. Services has been given, and in Bangalore they are ready to pay any amount of money, because the patient is very violent inside the house, is not ready to come to the hospital. There, this telemedicine or telepsychiatry practice guideline is very helpful. So there, again, you have to take some amount of risk to do this. This is the procedure. Healthcare worker in a community setting, he goes to the house or to the family, and he will check the ID of the patient, and he will do all the necessary assessments. He will do capacity assessment. If the capacity is there, he will ask him whether he would like to meet the doctor online. If he gives consent, he will go ahead with the consent, and he will do the telepsychiatry. If the patient has capacity and he says, I don't want telepsychiatry, he will stop it. He will walk away from that place because he has capacity. If the patient does not have capacity, then he will talk to the family members, capacity assessment is done, and online consultation is spoken to the family members, and then he will be shifted to the hospital. So this is the way they have been finalizing. What are the medicines? This is the last part of my presentation. So various medicines have been given, medication list O, A, B, and again, there has been a lot of controversy about which should be on O or A or B. O is basically over-the-counter medication. In psychiatry, none of them are over-the-counter medication, so let's be very clear about that. But you can give paracetamol, painkillers, they are all comes under the O, or maybe even the vitamins or supplements, nutritional. A is the one and B, and the prohibited list for everybody, irrespective of psychiatry or a gynecologist or maybe oncologist, prohibited list cannot be given. So if you look at the list A, so when we discussed about this list A, there was a discussion among the Indian Psychiatric Society, many of our fraternity. There, like doctor says that I would like to start venlafaxine, it is very good. Like Dr. Arvind says, for depression, I would like to start venlafaxine. Dr. Inla sir will say, no, I would like to start escitalopram. His son, Vishal says, no, I would like to start fluoxetine. I'll go with the old, is it gold? Or Pavitra may say, I would like to start imipramine. So for a single illness, there are different. But however, again, for the same illness, depending upon the age, if it is a child, the first line of medicine changes. If it is a pregnant woman, medicine changes again. The illness, and if it is a geriatric group with hypertension, diabetes, first line changes. So we do not have first line treatment as clearly as dictated. So we cannot have list A as a first line treatment. So what was the best methodology which was accepted by the Niti Aayog, Dr. V.K. Paul sir was said, when we thought for a moment, and then even the P.K. Dalal also was very happy with that, that was, can essential medicines which have been given by the ministry can be list A? They immediately accepted it. Then they said, please go with the essential medicine as the list A. They immediately endorsed it, and even V.K. Paul sir said, telepsychiatry operational guidelines, we are accepting the whole thing, and they gave even the forward was given by them. So this is the, again, it was, we did not decide just because they are essential medicine, we have taken list A. But this list A can be modified. It is by under the ministry. But however, IPS, as a member, we can say that, sir, how can you decide just because that? It's basically sitting with the ministry and discussing one, or else we can remove this in the next second amendment. But however, the recent amended telemedicine guidelines which has been submitted to the ministry, there we have removed list A and B. There is only two lists, but it has to be approved. It has not been approved. One is online, what can give, what cannot be given, that's it. There is nothing called as list A, list O, list B, there is nothing. Online which you can prescribe, which cannot be prescribed. These are the two things. A, B has been removed, even first consultation, follow-up consultation been removed. But however, that has been the recommendations given, but hope it will be considered. So these are the first line medicines which can be given in first consult. List B, this is basically, which are, does not fall in the essential psychotropic medicines will fall into list B. So prohibited medicine are the where we have to be very careful. They are prohibited. If you get caught here by prescribing these medicines, nothing can be done. Either they may go for consumer court or something goes wrong, you will be held responsible, because online you cannot prescribe them. They have been completely prohibited. But however, there was a move from the many de-addiction centers telling that why not diazepam can be given, or chlorodiazepoxide can be given, or sir, let's allow methylphenidate. Even Professor B.N. Gangadhar sir, my teacher, and even Savitra Malhotra ma'am, and even our CGC requested for methylphenidate. And the Niti Aayog discussion, they accepted it, but when it for legal opinion, just they said nothing doing. It's going to be a menace. Because Punjab has a different state rules. Tamil Nadu has a different state rules. Karnataka has a different state rules. Imagine if I am sitting in Karnataka and I start prescribing methylphenidate. Okay, patient who is sitting somewhere, maybe in Tamil Nadu, what he will do is, he will consult Dr. Pavitra, and he takes methylphenidate, and he will consult Dr. Vishal Reddy, he will buy methylphenidate, he will consult Dr. Arvind, and he will consult Dr. N. Raju, and he will have 10 prescription within next another 30 minutes, and he will sell it outside. If you go to Punjab, they say you can't give any psychotropic medicine. Basically, these medicines which are regulated under NDPS cannot be given on OP basis. It's only inpatient. That is the regulation. Imagine now I start giving prescription to Punjab patients. So they said we cannot control this unless the tagging of the patient and the doctor occurs, which occurs in US. If a doctor has given a prescription, his name, his KIMS registration, it is available online, and they are using blockchain methodology, which is very strong, which cannot be broken. That blockchain methodology, what they say is if I give it to one patient who is Aadhaar linked, and it will be seen, yes, this doctor has given this prescription to this patient. By chance, within another 10 minutes, he consults another doctor. Maybe Dr. Suresh from Chennai. And then he sees, oh, already is given. Just 5 minutes back, you have taken prescription. That methodology comes, till then we will not allow. So that's the legal hurdle comes because it will be misused. I know there are many of our psychiatrists who want to help patients. But at the same time, on the other hand, there are many patients who wants to misuse or the doctors who wants to misuse the. So that is the reason they have done. And there is the only one amendment which has occurred. That is, they have allowed 3 NDPS medicines, that is phenobarbital, clobazam, and clonazepam has been allowed. Otherwise, none of the benzodiazepine can be given online. With this, this is the format of prescription. I will not go into this, and just photos, take a photograph and send it to the patient. It need not be e-prescription. Explicit consent has to be given, and this is one of the caution: do not issue prescription without a diagnosis or provisional diagnosis. This is a common phenomena which we do. Without diagnosis, we issue a prescription. Don't do that. At least have a provisional diagnosis. And don't use patient data without authorization and consent. You take a photograph, take the video recording, and you want to share it with maybe somebody else. Maybe example I can tell you is Dr. Vishal Reddy comes to know that Dr. Panneerselvam is a very good doctor with regard to abnormal movements. He has taken a video and he sent it to Panneerselvam sir. And Panneerselvam, okay, he says, oh, this is TD, why don't you do this? And by mistake, he forwarded it to somebody else. And now it is not in the control of either Dr. Panneerselvam or Vishal Reddy because it is out of their mobile phone, it will replicate and it becomes a big issue. Yes, you can do it, but you have to take a consent which is irrevocable. The patient knows that once I have given consent, neither the doctor can withdraw the video because it is online. It multiplies. It is in a server, we can delete, but it is in a mobile, the mobile itself becomes a server. It will again send it to other people. So that you have to be very careful, and you have to give receipt for every telepsychiatric consultation. Otherwise, under Consumer Protection Act, it is an unfair trade practice. Let's be very clear, telling that I did this teleconsultation with Dr. X, and the Dr. X did not give receipt, gone. Under Consumer Protection Act, is done. So I'll stop here. If there is any question, I'll take the questions from here. Thank you very much. Over to you, Chairperson, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Suresh, for an exhaustive presentation of the telepsychiatric consultation and the loopholes. So from your point of speech, and we can clearly tell that there are a lot of pros and cons are there. So the one pros is like reducing the stigma, and there are a lot of cons are there, like relapse of manic patients, the violent agitated patients, substance abuse intoxicated patients. So all these patients, and ADHD children, so who are very much prone for disturbing our own in-person clinical consultations. So there are a lot of things and issues to be highlighted, and we have to concentrate on these areas. Now, before I open the questions to the floor, let me ask 2 questions. So one is the authorization signature, which you have mentioned. What we do know that if a psychotic patient does not have an insight. So who is going to sign for that, number 1? And number 2 is the draft of the prescription which you have showed that you have mentioned about the diagnosis is really needed. Diagnosis is really needed because many of our young generation people are, they go to the Google search and find out what is a diagnosis and ask all kinds of stupid questions to us. So how are you going to deal these two things?
Okay, the first question, authorization letter. See, authorization letter best is signed in front of you in an in-person consultation. If the patient has come to me and he says, sir, I am not going to be available, but my dad will contact you, then why don't you issue a authorization letter in front of me? And you know the patient is in the right frame of mind. It is just like advance directive, if you ask me. Advance directive is there in Mental Health Care Act and also in the Supreme Court Common Causes versus of Union of India in 2008, I think March 9th, in the euthanasia case, they have said advance directives can also be written there. So here is an advance directive is telling, if I am not coming for consultation, my father or my mother is going to come here. That's well and good. And if you are able to recognize the family member, it is not that just he is given authorization letter, I have to do the consultation. No. So it is the comfort, it is a professional discretion of the psychiatrist. Yes, I know this person, I have seen him, I know his father, they are my old patients, enable them. No sir, they have come only 2 times consultation, though there is authorization letter, but I am doubtful they are misusing it or the patient is not taking medicine. In such a scenario, you can say, okay, fine, but I want to see the patient. It's already 6 months over. Because every 6 months I have to do blood investigation to know what is happening to his kidney or what is happening to his liver. Then only I would like to give the prescription. So again, the professional discretion is open there. So that is regarding authorization letter. Did I answer your question, sir, regarding authorization letter? Second one was if there is a Google question, that is the...
Prescription diagnosis.
Okay.
So many of them are taking into the legal issues to the court and all these things, in spite of our telling that this is not valid point.
Okay. Sir, Dr. Arvind, sir, if you don't mind, I will ask you one question back to you. That means my response will be another question. If there is, your diagnosis is wrong, what will happen?
In psychiatry, diagnosis keeps changing. We cannot stick on to one diagnosis.
Even if it is, forget about the psychiatry, if it is a gynecologist, they made some wrong diagnosis, what will be the implication legally? Legally, the Supreme Court is very clear, wrong diagnosis is not medical negligence. Let's be very clear about that. Because diagnosis, even if there is a fever diagnosis, you ask 10 doctors will give different diagnosis for fever. For a cough, the diagnosis changes. So just because diagnosis changes, no. So difference of opinion is not a medical negligence. Let's be very clear about that. And it's your professional opinion. Today we will discuss a case here in front of a judge, maybe a Supreme Court judge. Let's present a case. Any case, maybe fever, it may be headache. 10 doctors you sit there, 10 doctors will give 10 opinion. Even the court knows about this. Unless the investigation is done, wherever the diagnosis is went wrong, the court has punished because the doctor has made a fever diagnosis, he has given medicine and he has asked for investigation. When the patient has brought the investigation, the doctor has not seen the investigation. There is a malaria positive, but he is going on giving enteric fever diagnosis and is treating for enteric fever. Patient died because of malaria and the patient family said, sir, we have brought this malarial parasite, it is positive, falciparum, and the doctor is treating his enteric delirium. That's where the court become angry, telling that they have given your diagnosis, they have given the, you have given the investigation and the investigation was shown. In spite of that, you continued with enteric treatment rather than giving malaria, and you did not do anything for, what is that, cerebral malaria. So the diagnosis is not the issue. Issue here is how you manage the diagnosis. That is where the issue comes, sir. Arvind, sir.
Okay. So the 3 questions to the floor. Just you can come to the mic and introduce yourself and put your 4 questions. Take this mic.
Good morning, sir. Myself, Dr. Somsekhar Bijjar. This is not a question. Government of India, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare has launched last year E-Sanjeevani OPD, which caters all sorts of telemedicine practices. And many of the issues, what you are told, with respect to the telepsychiatry practices are not covered there. Many times we get a calls from the community health officer or a ASHA worker, because most of the time patient may not be knowing how to use the mobile or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And authorization part is not happening there. That is number 1. Number 2, that part has to be addressed. And also the confidentiality issues, because most of the time neither the patient family members will not be there, but follow-up cases and all, it's fine. And the positive thing was that there is a good prescription format has been designed by the government of India. It's very good, and all the most of the medication, as you told, it's all included. Only thing is, I would like to request you to put up the word with the e-Sanjeevani people to look at these issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Somshekhar. That's a very wonderful comment. Dr. Somshekhar made a very important comment that there will be no authorization issues. Because the e-Sanjeevani platform started immediately after the lockdown occurred. At that time, again, the telemedicine guideline came and e-Sanjeevani almost completed 1 crore consultations actually. Free consultation from the government of India, which none of the countries has done. And also we reached 100 crore vaccination also, I think, yesterday. So that means we are able to reach very fast. Of course, there are some hiccups. And Tuesday is the meeting. Definitely we will be able to communicate that. But however, e-Sanjeevani is a platform for all. So it will not be able to give only for psychiatry or only for other medicine. So they want to make it as simple as possible. If you it was again, if you look at the first guidelines, it was very complicated. It was around 300 pages document. This should be for compliance, this should be software, who will be handling software, which technician should be there on the other side, it should be BE computers or diploma computers, all nonsense were there. It was bringing too many people in between doctor and patient. They said, remove all those, it should be just a communication via media, that's it. Thanks for your comments, definitely we will try to highlight that. Yes sir, please.
I'm Anurag Shrivastava from Hyderabad, sir. Sir, about the proxy consultation and proxy prescriptions, even before the telemedicine thing had started, these can be a little dicey. I wanted to share one experience I had. This was before the telemedicine guidelines, much before COVID, in 2012 to 2015. So I had seen one patient whom I diagnosed as postpartum psychosis, and she had been put on treatment and she recovered. About 2 years later or 3 years later, her husband came back, and husband had come in the first visit also. And he said that she stopped the medication. Medication was stopped because it was of postpartum onset when she recovered. I had only advised the medication to be stopped after 2 years probably. So he said that she has relapsed and she's showing the following symptoms, and she's refusing to come to you. So I had not taken any consent from the patient. I knew the husband. On the basis of his advice, I re-prescribed the medication and I advised him to bring the patient in the next visit. He never came. She also never came. 2 years later, he filed for divorce in the court and he attached my 2 prescriptions saying that the first time doctor had said it is postpartum psychosis. Second time, she has relapsed without any pregnancy or postpartum onset. Therefore, she is suffering from a mental illness. The girl side of the family then contacted me saying that she was never ill the second time. He has only come, he has misrepresented the facts to you, and when you have asked him to come back to you, they never came. Now the court is saying the psychiatrist has given 2 prescriptions, one of which is not of postpartum onset, and therefore she is suffering from schizophrenia. And that will be taken into consideration. So your comments on that?
Okay, excellent. This can happen with anybody. You ask any of our senior psychiatrists who are sitting in your platform, they would have done it, I have also done it. Invariably it will happen with you. That is the reason where our publication matters. That is the reason we came up with one publication regarding coerced medication and proxy consultation. Name any hospital. If I am in your place, if I want to defend your case, if I am defending your case as a lawyer, I would say, send an immediate RTI to all 34 mental hospitals, in where Dr. Raju also was there in charge. Ask them, how many is the proxy consultation? And show them, the court, sir, this is the way. Many patients do not come. Family members come. 30% is there. And look at this publication from NIMANS. They say 35% there is a proxy consultation occurs. We don't force the patient to come. The patient is fine, he is working, and they requires prophylaxis. If you tell them there was no any bad intention with me, this is a normal practice we do. And anyhow, it was done in 2013 and 14. Mental Health Care Act was not there, 2017. Under 1987, you can give prescription, it is a prophylaxis. I have written clearly to bring the patient at the earliest. So we do this, sir, and there is no bad intention. Immediately the court understands it, and you can call one of your expert, any person as a colleague. If he gives the opinion, nobody will harm, nobody will punish you, no court will punish you. That means you should show that it's a reasonable degree of practice. That means it can happen with me, it can happen with any of the senior colleagues. Hope I answered your question, sir. So that's where the publication matters. So immediately we came up with the 30% of the proxy consultation and proxy prescription. Even in NIMANS, today also it occurs. Because we cannot force the patient to come. Because imagine a poor patient has to come all the way from a village to take his complete faith on NIMANS medicine. He doesn't want, even if it is a 10 rupees medicine in a village, he doesn't want to buy it there. Even if it is available in PHC in Karnataka, he will not take it. He will come all the way from to NIMANS. And if he has to come with the patient, he has to again 2 people's travel, food, going back. So in such a scenario, we have to insist that again, under new Mental Health Care Act 2017, it will be a tricky situation at this point of time. Better to have authorization letter. Thank you, sir, for your wonderful case.
When I too had a similar case, but it was a different one, sir, regarding the proxy consultations. So if it is going to be the first time, they are asking them to bring the patient, sir. And it's going to be for the second time. Sometimes they say they are aggressive. They are not brought into the picture. The husband or the parents, they say you give some prescription. Sometimes we have to give like Serenase drops or that is Risperidone drops. That can be prescribed, sir, at least.
Yeah,
Is what-
I would rather say, madam, one is you're asking this question to a clinician or a legal
Really,
person.
no, sir, because they are asking something to bring the patient, that's what. That is, we don't want to give prescriptions. They say, madam, he is not at all cooperative or she is not cooperative. Something you please give so that injectables cannot be given, sir. So that we'll put somewhere, she'll be under sedation so that we can bring her. That can be prescribed through telemedicine or
Yeah,
not, sir. That's
madam, if I'm in your place, and if I have a complete faith on the family, I know the family very well, they have been under treatment since past 20 years, I will close my eyes and I'll write. If there is only one consultation, 2 consultation, and the family is highly rights oriented, as they come inside, you come to know whether they are rights oriented, when the way they ask question,
Yeah.
I'll gauge that.
And that too when the in-laws and
Should
the
I take
husband,
risk
it's
or not?
really
Yeah.
problematic, sir.
If the father and mother is standing with them and the father or mother is asking, and I know the family, I will definitely just give the prescription. If it is the first time, I don't know anything about the family, or they have come only 2-3 times, and the father or the son is talking about legal rights, I'll say, please bring the patient. You have to again, even sometimes it may go wrong also, but somewhere we have to take risk, and you have to take that reasonable degree of risk. That's, I assured, but I would like to go ahead with you telling that proxy consultation should be
No,
allowed.
sir, if another doctor asks, that is, madam, please give me, he asked me, please send me, I'll give the prescription. I told you can give the prescription directly.
Yeah, true.
But it is not for his client, sir, it is for his wife. That was the problem there.
Right.
I told him, you yourself can give this, you can prescribe. That is
Yes,
what,
ma'am.
that's also happening, sir.
Yes.
I do agree with completely Dr. Suresh because what he told, but what ma'am is asking is it is a really practical problem. And we also thought that whether it can be given sometimes some of our colleagues what to do. Even I have also done sometimes that prescription will be another name. That means who has come by his or her name, we do prescriptions. We have done previously. But why don't we think otherwise? Can we legalize this or something else? We have to do something for this because it is a practical problem which cannot understand some developed country or Western countries. In like India, we have to think like this. What is your opinion? What is your take?
Dr. Raju sir, the current president has placed one important point. Like proxy consultation, proxy prescription, we can come up with a positional state from IPS telling that, yes, there are patients who require long-term medication, who require sometimes proxy prescription, psychiatry should facilitate, and what are the conditions which can facilitate, like bipolar affective disorder, multiple episodes, there is episodes of severe violence, either we can get advance directive written by them, or else you can say that, yes, in such a scenario, the psychiatrist can go with the proxy consultation and proxy prescription. You can mention that some conditions can be put forward, telling that it may be around 5-6 episodes, and each episode was very severe. Let's a group of people sit together, come up with a positional statement for proxy prescription and consultation, either online or offline. And let's have a clear telling that the patient has been seen. Yeah, I would rather agree with you, but first start with our home only. That is, we will start telling that this is done in all mental hospitals. Best thing is like under next another, maybe in another 1 year, we get the proxy consultation, how much is there in all hospitals, especially in government, and then in private, and then take that and say, form a guideline, clinical practice guideline, under what circumstances can be done, cannot be done, and when it is helping the patients, the court also will support you. If you're doing anything against the patients, then they will become angry. Then if they say, no, it is there, and we, in this clinical practice guideline, bring some family members as a user, as authors. They also say, no, sir, it is required. The court also will keep quiet. See, when it is everybody is win-win situation, nobody will create trouble. If there is a conflict, yes, we have to go with the law. But again, if the law is against good things, the law can be amended. So I would rather request both the presidents are here to come up with a clinical practice guideline first and say, it is happening even in the Apex Institute, and it is the norm, 30 to 35% patient comes, they don't come, proxy prescription is there, when it can be given, when it cannot be given, that if you are able to give a guideline, why not? Yes.
Sir, my question is about the diagnosis. I think patients' right to get a diagnosis. We have to give them the diagnosis, yes. But my question is, why should the diagnosis be in the prescription? Because in my prescription, I put the name, year of birth, gender, date, file number, because if they want anything, and only the medicine, generic and the commercial. Why should the diagnosis be there? We have communicated to the patient. Why should a medical shop person see the diagnosis? Especially, isn't the patient entitled to their privacy?
Yeah. Sir, the first question, what you have mentioned is, it is the legal requirement at this point of time. Many a time they have said that in certain cases, like if you look at the recent amendment in Medical Termination of Pregnancy 2021 Rules and Act, they have clearly said that you will not enter anywhere the name of the person, it can be in the main registry, and after 5 years that registry should be burnt. They are very clear for certain diagnosis, for HIV you cannot do it, label it, they are very clear. Similarly, tomorrow if you are able to come up in Mental Health Care Act, nowhere the diagnosis will be written, it is fine. But by the rule of thumb, the patient is entitled for diagnosis, okay? You have told the diagnosis, patient has forgotten now. And he says, you are not told the diagnosis. Then the court has to rely on whom? Should he believe the doctor or the patient? Then they say, write it on the prescription. That's where the prescription started coming as a diagnosis. Because patient, yes, if the patient and doctor relationship is good, nothing will go wrong. But when the contest comes, sir, when I went there, he gave this medicine, he did not talk to me even 1 minute also. He gave the prescription and sent me. He did not even tell me a diagnosis. Then the court would like to listen to the patient rather than the doctor. If you have made the diagnosis, I have explained them. So that's where the diagnosis came, sir. But however, certain diagnoses have been told not to written on the file and the file to be destroyed. Who knows, maybe in another 10 years down the line, Mental Health Care Act can be amended telling that under no prescription, especially in telepsychiatry, that should be made available. It's definitely possible.
Thank you.
It may be, because it should be rights-based. If the patient parties move to the court will say, yes, remove the diagnosis. And we are also will be win-win.
Thank you, Dr. Suresh. I think we had an excellent session, and I think we will close it because we are running out of time. Maybe the president has some remark. Maybe we can give something. We are running out of time. I'm sorry about
also, I favor to write diagnosis, because if you don't write diagnosis, it will increase stigma. If we can write diabetes, if you can write hypertension, why not schizophrenia? Right now we are so much advanced and we should write diagnosis. If we write diagnosis in regular basis, it will definitely reduce the stigma. People will not bother about the diagnosis. That is my opinion.
Thank you, Dr. Gautam Saha, and I thank Dr. Suresh for having had an excellent session. Before I conclude, let me answer that. He said that we should come out with, he put the onus on the President and President-elect, but I should remind Dr. Suresh Badamat that the brains like Dr. Suresh Badamat will guide us, and perhaps we will have some expert committee to give us the position statement where the proxy prescription should be scientifically valid. You just can't go on just because it favors the patient. You just can't go on having a proxy statement. Something like suppose 6 months, 8 months, 9 months, we don't know whether a metabolic syndrome erupts or what happens. So this has to be kept in mind. So probably we will have something under the leadership of Dr. Suresh Badamat by next year. I think I'm request on from the dais officially request him to give us some statement so that IPS can forward it to the government and also work with the government and all. So again, we had an excellent session once again, I repeat, and probably I request Dr. Badamat to give us another lecture next year, how to circumvent the problems which in general the law creates to us. Like Dr. Anurag Srivastava, I think he left, just like Dr. Anurag Srivastava has said, I think we have problems in our, so this thing, not only knowing the legalities, not only leaving the positions, we also should discuss how to protect ourselves in case most of us do break the laws. There are no two ways about it, like proxy prescriptions, all of us give. I think let us be very clear, as he said, 30 to 40 prescriptions, including the government hospitals and demands and mental hospitals. We do things which are not absolutely under the law. So we need to also have the measures in anticipation of likely problems, how to protect ourselves. I think this society, basically, we are here to protect ourselves and in service of the patients. I hope Dr. Suresh will come out with some document. Maybe we can also add the members which he thinks are useful to him. So we will have a committee next year, and I think I request him to bring out that. And I think we have a question, award for a best question. Dr. Somshekar wins, the last man, but there is some dialogue in a Telugu movie, it's not important when you come, it is important how effective you are. So it was the last question, but he became the best question. Thank you, pleasure.
Thank you, sir. It was
On
a
behalf of
useful.
the chairpersons, I thank the organizers for giving this opportunity.
Thank you,
to
sir.
be the
It was a useful and
chairing. It's an honor to
informative
be
session.
chairing.
Now I call. Now I call upon the chairpersons to hand over the memento to Dr. Suresh Badamat. Now I call upon Dr. Sophia to honor the chairpersons.
Sir, you put the ball in my court again. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, sir.